Literature. Everything that has been written can be called literature, from comics and leaflets to novels and plays. But literature normally refers to a very fine piece of writing. There are two main types of literature. Fiction is writing that is made up by an author, and non-fiction is about real things and people. Printed books. New books are always being published. You can buy them from high street bookshops. Bookworm. Most towns and cities have a local library where you can go and borrow books to take home and read. Key dates. 2000 BC. A Sumerian epic poem called Gilgamesh was recorded on 12 clay tablets. 600 BC. Greek writer Aesop wrote his fables, including The Boy Who Cried Wolf and The Crow and Picture. 500 BC. The most famous Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, was written in the form of a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. AD 100. Plutarch wrote the first biography, Parallel Lives, about Greek soldiers' lives. AD 868. The earliest known woodblock printed book, the Diamond Sutra, was printed in China. 1007. Murasaki Shikibu wrote the world's first novel, The Tale of Genji, based on Japanese court life. 1190-1320. Writers in Iceland started to write down their history in stories known as sagas. 1593. William Shakespeare wrote one of his first plays, The Taming of the Shrew. 1697. French author Charles Perrault wrote Tales of Mother Goose, a collection of folk tales including Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast. 1800. The Old Curiosity Shop, a novel by English author Charles Dickens, was published a chapter a month. 1837. The first book for the blind, a summary of French history, century by century, was printed using Braille. 1841. American author Edgar Allan Poe created the first true detective story, The Murders in the Rue Morgue. 1864. Jules Verne wrote the first science fiction story, Journey to the Center of the Earth. 1901. French poet Sully Prudhomme was the first person to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. 1910. The first children's encyclopedia was published by Englishman Arthur Mee. 1914-18. A group of English poets, including Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon, recorded the horror of life for soldiers in World War I. 1943. Anne Frank, a Jewish girl hiding from Nazis in World War II, wrote a diary that was published after she died in a concentration camp. 1986. The first book appeared on CD-ROM, called Electronic Encyclopedia. Fact file. Key writers and their most important works. Homer, c. 800 BC Greek. The Iliad Virgil, 72-1 BC Roman. The Aeneid Geoffrey Chaucer, 1343-1400 English. The Canterbury Tales John Bunyan, 1628-88 English. The Pilgrim's Progress Jane Austen, 1775-1817 English. Pride and Prejudice Herman Melville, 1819-91, American. Moby Dick Leo Tolstoy, 1828-1910, Russian. War and Peace Henry James, 1843-1916, American. Portrait of a Lady Rabindranath Tagore, 1861-1941, Indian. Gitanjali James Joyce, 1882-1941, Irish. Ulysses Franz Kafka, 1883-1924, Czechoslovakia. The Trial Ezra Pound, 1885-1972, American. The Cantos T.S. Eliot, 1888-1965, American. The Wasteland Aldous Huxley, 1894-1963, English. Brave New World Vladimir Nabokov, 1899-1977, Russian. Lolita John Steinbeck, 1902-68, American. The Grapes of Wrath Pablo Neruda, 1904-73, Chilean. Great song William Golding, 1911-93, English. Lord of the Flies Patrick White, 1912-90, Australian. Voss Albert Camus, 1913-60, French. The Outsider Dylan Thomas, 1914-53, Welsh. Under Milkwood Yukio Mishima, 1925-70, Japanese. The Sound of Waves Gunter Grass, born 1927, German. The Tin Drum Gabriel Garcia Marquez, born 1928, Colombian. 100 Years of Solitude. Novels and stories. The term fiction, meaning something made up or invented, describes novels and stories. The writer of fiction uses a combination of imagination and close observation of human nature to create an interesting story with well-developed characters. Novels and stories can help us to see life from a different angle. Goddess myths are folk stories that deal mostly with religious subjects, such as the births and deaths of gods and goddesses. A novel becomes a film. Jane Austen's novel, Sense and Sensibility, was made into a film in 1996. Find out more. Myths and legends. People all over the world have always loved telling and listening to stories. The earliest versions of myths and legends were passed on by word of mouth, though legend literally means something to be read, such as the Viking sagas and the Welsh Mabinogion. Children's literature. Books were not written specifically for children until the 1700s. In the 1800s, different types of children's literature developed. These included adventure stories, animal stories, school stories, and non-fiction. Illustrations are an important feature in children's books, especially books for younger children. Book publishers have departments that specialize in printing children's books. Nativity Scene. This distinctive illustration is from Christmas, a book by Jan Pienkowski. Find out more. The short story. Many writers enjoy the discipline of the short story. It makes them think very carefully and put ideas and descriptions very precisely. Although it is now less popular with readers, it is ideal for radio listening, and can also be adapted for television, making it ideal for children's literature. Fairy and folk tales. Fairy and folk tales often appear as collections in the same book. Folk tales are about the legends, customs, and beliefs of ordinary people, while fairy stories deal with fairies, pixies, elves, and other imaginary beings with magic powers. Fairy and folk tales have been written and read by people of all ages throughout the world. The Arabian Nights is a collection of ancient tales from Asia and North Africa. The tales of the Danish writer Hans Christian Andersen and the German brothers Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm have become famous all over the world. Wicked Witch. This illustration from Andersen's The Snow Queen shows the witch combing Gerda's hair. Poetry. Poetry is a form of literature that expresses ideas and feelings by using words in a particular arrangement to make them more significant. Poetry is often used to express love, or to describe the beauty of nature. It can be sad, or it can make us laugh. American poet Sylvia Plath, an American poet and novelist, wrote about personal suffering in many of her poems. Word sounds. The way a poem sounds often contributes to its meaning. The word shelf rhymes with itself. A group of lines is called a verse. The word bangs actually sounds like a noisy bell. Find out more. Modern poetry. Today, poetry depends much less on regular rhyme and rhythm, and explores the basic sounds of words and their natural rhythms for effect. Subject matter, too, may be concerned with almost any aspect of our daily life, and not just love or nature. Types of poetry. A poem that tells a long story is called an epic. In Scotland and England, a similar shorter poem is the ballad. Both may be dramatic and exciting. A sonnet is a 14-line poem that has often been used to express ideas and feelings. Haikus are Japanese poems with only 3 lines, which should be recited in one breath. Free verse is poetry that does not have a regular rhyme, rhythm, or fixed number of lines. What nonsense! English Edward Lear's witty, rhyming verses were published in A Book of Nonsense.
Uh, there was an old man on whose nose most birds of the air could repose, but they all flew away at the closing of day, which revealed that old man and his nose.
Find out more. Epics. The Greeks and Romans had several kinds of poetry. The most important are the very long epic poems in Greek by Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, describing the war between Greece and Troy, and the return home of the hero Odysseus, also known as Ulysses. The Latin poet Virgil wrote the Aeneid in a similar way, telling how Aeneas left Troy and, after many wanderings, arrived in Italy. Plays. A play tells a story through the speech and actions of the characters in the story. Most plays are performed by actors in a theater, or in front of television cameras for watching at home. A play script, unlike a novel, needs to be acted out in order to achieve its full effect. Old dramatists. The plays of William Shakespeare, 1564 to 1616, are still very popular, and performed all over the world. Modern play. Albert Finney and Tom Courtenay acted in art by Yasmin Reza. Find out more. Lasting plays. Playwrights Molière and Shakespeare both lived more than 300 years ago, but their plays, such as Lava by Molière and Macbeth by Shakespeare, are still popular. Many of the comedies that they wrote in the 1600s are still funny today. Playing old and new. Laurence Olivier, one of this century's most famous actors, starred in Henry V by Shakespeare and also in more modern plays, such as The Entertainer by John Osborne. Like all good players, he could make an audience believe that what they are seeing is real, not just an act. Moving works. Shakespeare's famous tragedies, such as King Lear and Hamlet, continue to move audiences, while modern tragedies, such as Tennessee Williams's Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, appeal to the same emotions in a more modern way. Non-fiction. Unlike fiction, where the writer's imagination plays such a large part, non-fiction is based on facts about events and people in the real world. Non-fiction includes school textbooks, biographies and autobiographies, letters and diaries, and histories. A history records the events of a period in history, or the life of a people or country. A diary is an autobiography which is written on a daily basis to record the happenings in a person's life, as they occur. Most newspaper and magazine writing is also non-fiction. Book of Facts. An encyclopedia is a book or series of books which have general information on all areas of knowledge. Biographies. When a person's life is written by someone else, it is known as biography. If the person writes his or her own life, it is called autobiography. Biographies can bring the past alive for us, because they deal with real people and events that actually happened. Biographers read the diaries and letters of their subjects to help make their writings as accurate as possible. Autobiographies often give information about the private lives of public people such as celebrities and politicians. The Life of Fergie, the Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, wrote her 1996 autobiography with the help of Jeff Cartlin. Diaries and letters. Many people record their daily lives, the things they saw and heard, and the people they met, in diaries, either written or tape recorded. Although a diary is normally written only for its writer, diaries can provide fascinating information to others about the thoughts and activities of people who are no longer alive. One famous diary is that of Samuel Pepys. Among his writings is a description of the Great Fire of London, which he saw in 1666. Like diaries, letters often record what people did or thought. But a letter is always written to another person. Famous diarist Samuel Pepys's diaries were written in code. They were decoded in the 1800s and later published.